In this lecture, we're going to learn about functors. And a functor is an object of a class that overloads the function called operator, or the parenthesis operator, as you see here. And some of you must be asking, why would you want to do that? To really explain this, we're going to look at an example. Here we have a class called print, and inside we have a bunch of operators overloaded. And our operator is the function called operator, as you see here. And you overload it following the same rules we do follow for the other operators. We say operator, and we say which operator we want to overload here. You can really return anything from this operator, or you can pass any parameter you want to do what you want in your application. For example, in this case, we are taking in a string parameter, and then we're going to do whatever we want in the body. For example, we are printing this here, and we have another overloaded operator that returns a string, and it is going to take the last name and the first name, and it is just going to concatenate these two strings and return a concatenated version of the last name and the first name here. This is something you can do. But notice that we are overloading this function called operators. Now, once you have an object of this class created, suppose we have an object in the main function here. We have a print object of the print class. We can say something like this. We can say print. We can basically call a function using the object that we have here. We can say print and pass Duncan, and the compiler is going to look at this and look at this class. It's going to find that we have the function called operator overloaded, and we take a string parameter. So it's going to know that it has a candidate for the call here, and it is going to call this function using the parameter that we pass here. Okay, so if we do this, this is going to call this function, and it is going to say the name is Duncan here. We can also use print objects as function parameters. For example, here we have a do something function, which takes a print object by reference, and it is going to call our operator using the syntax here, and this is going to print the name is Johnson through the do something function here. We can also call the other operator by passing in the first name and the last name, and this is going to print Jon Snow. Notice that this is going to return a string, and that's what we're going to be printing directly through stdc out here. And this is really going to work. And I realize some of you might find this confusing and find that this is really convoluted. If you wanted to call this function, why don't you call it directly? I understand you. But this is going to become critical later in the course when we learn about function callbacks that we don't really have enough tools to understand now. I am explaining this here because we are learning about operators, and I wouldn't feel like this chapter is complete without talking about functors, because they are operators you can overload for your class. Okay, now that you know this, we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and play with this a little more. Okay, here we are in our working folder. The current project is functors. We're going to grab the code in our template project and use that as a starting point. We're going to put this in, and then we're going to open this little guy in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping here. We are going to clear what we have in the main function, and we are going to set up our print class. We're going to say class print, and we need to remember to close this with a semicolon. And the class is not going to have any member variables. It's just going to have our function called operators. We are going to put these operators in the public scope of the class because we want them to be callable from the outside. And then we're going to put in our operator, which is just going to print the name. Let's include the string class because we are about to use it. And we're going to say void operator function call, and then we're going to take an std string by reference. Let's say const std string by reference, and let's say name, for example. And we're going to make this a const member function because it's not going to be modifying our object here. And inside we can really do whatever we want. We're going to say stdc out, and we're going to say whatever name we passed in here. This is going to work. We can also set up another one which is going to return something. Again, as you overload these operators, you can tune the return type and the parameters that you pass here to fit what you want to do in your application. In this case, I don't want to do anything with the return type, so I'm not going to put any return type here. And I just need one parameter, so that's what I'm going to put in. But for the second operator here, we want to return something, and we're going to return a string object. And the operator is going to be operator function call. We're going to take two parameters. We're going to take one to be the last name, and we're going to take a second one to be the first name. And they are going to be strings by reference. Let's put this on the second line and close the left pane here so that we have some breathing room. And now that we have this operator, we're going to say that it is const because it's not going to be modifying this class in any way. And inside, we're just going to return a concatenated version of the strings we have. So we're going to return last name. Let's say last name properly. And we're going to append a space in between. And then we're going to append the first name. And this is going to create a local string object and return it. And we can use it as a return type here. Okay, now that we have this thing, this is a functor. This is a class that overloads the function call operator, and we can create objects of it. We can say print, for example. This is going to create an object of this using the default constructor, which is really not going to do anything. This is fine by us. And now we can call our operators here. And the way we do that, we use our object, we say print, and then we say function call, and then we can pass any parameter. For example, if I pass in John, the compiler is going to match this call to the operator that takes a string n, and this is going to print the name is John. Let's build and run, and you're going to see that this is going to work. Okay, the build is good. We can bring up a PowerShell window, and we're going to clear and run Rooster. You're going to see that the name is John. This is printing our message. We can even pass this to a function. For example, let's put in our do something function that we saw in the slides. We're going to say do something, and we're going to take a const print object by reference. Let's call this printer, and this is going to just do fine. And then we're going to say printer and say snow here. This is going to just delegate the work of printing to the do something function, and we can really do this. Now we can do something and pass our print object by reference, and this is going to print snow. We can do that, so we're going to run the task to build with GCC. You see the build is good. We can clear and run Rooster, and this is going to print snow as part of this call here, and this is really cool. We can also call our other operator directly through an std_cout statement. Remember that this is returning the concatenated version of the last name and first name that we pass in here. So we can say std_cout, and we're going to say print, and then we're going to say Daniel, and then the second parameter is going to be the first name, let's say Gray, and then we're going to put std_endl at the end to move to the next line. This is going to work. We're going to build and run this. Okay, the build is good. We can clear and run Rooster, and this is going to print Daniel Gray. Hopefully you can see that you can overload the function call operator for your classes and use that like we do here. I realize this is not very useful by now, but when we get to learn about callbacks later in the course, this is going to become very crucial, and it is going to be very useful. This is really all I had to share in this lecture. I hope you found it interesting. We are going to stop here in this one. In the next one, we're going to try and recap what we saw in this chapter. So go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.